Hi everyone, welcome back to Business Storytelling with Mushin-Makedonskiy. I have a special guest for you today. This is Anjali Sharma from. I'm just so proud to say it because Anjali is from Singapore and she's doing storytelling, and she is the founder of Narrative, the Business of Stories. It's a great company with a lot of content. I will post a link for you guys in the descriptions. Anjali, it's so great to see you here. Thank you for coming to the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Tim. It's a pleasure to be here. Who would have known? Russia. Really? I'm so happy to be talking to you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure for myself because as we discussed previously, I really know about you from my colleague who is also doing storytelling in Russia. So Konstantin, if you're watching this, it's so great.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. To your friend, thank you. I'll have trouble pronouncing his name, so I would avoid that. But thank you so much. I'll be connecting with you on Instagram for sure.
Great. So we're here today to discuss business storytelling and specifically storytelling in change management, because that's your main focus for today. So for starters, can you tell me, how does storytelling connect with change management? How do you see this?
Yeah, so, let's try and understand this using any existing organizations that I'm working with, their example.
Okay.
So there's a couple of things that kind of are interesting to observe. So for example, we take an organization that is a telecommunications organization here in Singapore. The change that they are looking at working on is to completely change their CRM system, which is the client relationship management system,
Wow.
which is a legacy system, has been in place for about 20 years. They decide it's not fulfilling their needs anymore. They need to change it. They need to have a new one. Now, it's great to make that decision. However, the trouble is when you look behind and you see 10,000 people who work in this organization who need to learn how to use this very new system. And sadly, with the old system, the people can just walk in, have their eyes closed, know exactly which screen to turn on. So we are now telling them to stop doing what they've been doing for so many years and start doing this, working on this new system. That's where the trouble comes in. It's great to know, rationally decide that you want to, make the change happen, but how do you get people to embrace that change? So that's the first thing. The second layer thing is when we get to the level of understanding, okay, we need to bring these people along, the natural tendency for an individual or an organization is to start giving people reasons and benefits and knowledge about the change, right? So for example, for this telecommunications organization, the reason that they gave was, we are losing market share, we are working in isolation, we have way too many complex systems. Now, if I go and speak to a telephone operator who works in this organization, and I really did, and I said, do you understand the reasons that they're trying to give you for the change? The telephone operator turned around and in confidence said to me, I don't get paid enough to be worrying about market share.
That's so true.
The truth is those kind of reasons and messaging does not land at the ground level. Change happens when people, it's been quoted in one of this book, which was so profound for me. I forget the name of the author, but when people see something, they feel something, and then they get the fire in their belly to want to change. So clearly this faith in reasons that we have, that reasons would work, and, we can just work with giving people reasons, never really bears out in practice. So then we come to the third layer. Okay, we get it that we've got people to bring along. We can't work with reasons and benefits and knowledge. Then what do? We need to create the desire to want to change before we start managing that change. And that desire to want to change often comes in the story that people resonate with. The desired outcome is this. You get up, you tell me the story as an organizational leader. I sit here and listen, and I say, oh my God, this system is going to make my life better. I'm now motivated to want to learn more about it. Tell me, what do I need to do? So that's the desired outcome from the change story. So change management fixes itself really beautifully when you bring the change story as a precursor to change management implementation.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's
So,
how they.
wow, that's an insight for me. So you don't use a storytelling to provide the change; you use it to open up the people for the change. So it's wow, that's already an insight for me because I was thinking about change and working with stories in the process. So Anjali, that's amazing. Thank you. Can you tell me a bit more about what stories should we use beforehand and like maybe in the process to also like what types of stories are there if there are any?
Yeah. So, over the years of doing this, obviously, I've kind of in my head formed a very structured approach to this because I've seen it work so many times that I can codify it, right? I can now walk, let's draw columns, and this is what we're going to start working on. But obviously, in the initial years, it was a process of trial for me.
Yeah.
I'll answer your question about what kind of stories. The very first story that I like to work on is um, it's it's a story that does the job of telling the listener, I didn't even know that this is a problem, right? So, for example, I go back to those people who work in telecommunications department as
Yeah.
telephone operators or operations. When they're working with the legacy system, they're so used to it that they don't even think it's a problem. They're just putting up with it, they're just carrying on with their daily life. They've gotten used to the mediocre nature of that system.
Yeah.
So the first story that I look for is a story that provides people an insight. And someone in one of the books, change management books, beautifully quoted that people are like fish in the water. So if you go and ask the fish, how's the water? The fish is going to
Ah,
say,
beautiful.
what is water, right? So it's exactly that situation that people actually are in the problem, but they even recognize that it's a problem, right?
Yeah.
And something in the world changes that makes people feel like makes people understand that we need to change. For example, why is it that in the past we could work with data and work with Excel, but now why is it that we need to use Tableau? What changed in our world that causes that change? So the first story that I really look for is an insight that wakes people up, and people go, oh my God, I didn't even realize that. I didn't even, think of it. So that first section I always say is give me the insight and wake me up a little bit. So insightful stories that really clearly demonstrate to us what changed in our world that is making us change. And this doesn't have to be a global change. Could be something that affects the organization. For example, another organization, they are a region, Asia Pacific region. In
Yeah.
that region, they have China.
Okay.
70% of the total revenue comes from China. Suddenly, China is not a part of their business. That is a big change. Now they are left with countries who are producing only 30% of their revenue, yet the goal desires for them to have the same amount of revenue without China as well, right? So now something changes in their world that actually will make them change as well. So the first story that I look for is something that gives us the insight of what changed in our world. The second story that I look for in the column is a real life moment where people have faced the problem that change creates. So, for example, a factory worker.
Like, sorry, you mean like this ground level people
Yeah.
face this big world problem? You mean this one?
Yes. So they go from this macro change to this micro change, right? So how does it affect them? So, for example, a factory worker who works in a semiconductor factory has been working there for over 10 years. So let's just call her Madam Tan, okay? Madam Tan has been working there for over 10 years. When she first got the job of working in the factory, her role is to take the semiconductor chips and put them in the cart and move them from one point to the other point. So these points could be where manufacturing gets done, and then after that, packaging gets done. So when she first started her role, in one day, roughly, the movement approximately is about 10 times back and forth. That's what a standard way of loading the cart, putting the cart to the other side looks like.
Yeah.
Now, over the years, it's the same Madam Tan, but the number of times she's moving the cart up and down in which she's moving the semiconductor chips has increased in a lot of time. Let's assume and imagine in this case it's gone to 24 times. Now, she physically can't do that. It is impossible for anyone to do so many more times. Now, if I bring that global macro change and explain to her how that what changed in our world caused you a problem because our systems didn't change, our way of working didn't change, our number of people in the organization didn't change, but the job we expected you to do changed. So now that's causing you a problem. The problem you have now is that you're physically not able to cope with the amount of work that is there. So then I have to bring it down from macro change to a micro change and how it affects individuals in the organization.
Wow.
And at that point, individuals go, oh my God, that's so true. I've been feeling it, So normally the change communication at a very large level, right?
Yeah, like we're doing this as a company. Wow, that's really open. Like
then that's where resonance happens.
yes.
And then you have to move into that's like a typical negative story. And we all know negative stories are fabulous at grabbing people's attention.
Oh yeah.
But totally hopeless at giving them the path to move or change and do what they need to do. And when these people are now emotionally feeling the problem because it is their problem, it's no more the CEO's problem, and it is no more like I don't get paid enough to worry about that problem, and it is my problem. As one of my favorite author, Seth Godin, says, if I could write a me-mail, I'll write a me-mail, because everybody there are three people the world worries about, I, me, and myself, So when it becomes your own problem, it's a perfect time for me to introduce what the organization is doing to change.
Wow.
Then because now you're feeling it and it's perfect for me to introduce. So that's like my third vertical.
Wow. So, and I mean, like, that's the piece where everyone is aiming for in the beginning, but you have to do the pre-work. It feels really different. It's so great. Wow.
Yeah,
Amazing.
it does. Because in this book Switch, they wrote, there's a lovely book. They wrote this really lovely line. If reasons were good enough for change, we will not have teenagers having tattoos, because there are plenty of reasons that we should not. Teenagers should. If reasons were good enough, then nobody should be SMSing whilst driving. And there are plenty of people who do that. So reasons do not work, and knowledge about change does not work. A story about change that makes individuals feel it is my problem, I see the problem, I feel the problem, I get the fire in my belly to want to change.
Wow.
It's when people go, okay, now I'm feeling it. Tell me what do I need to do to learn more, to be successful with this change.
Yeah.
And that's when we introduce the change. And once we introduce the change, we show them how that difficulty that you were facing in moving the cart up and down, when I introduce this change, how that life of yours will change. What exactly will happen with you on the floor when I introduce this new thing. In this scenario, the change we were introducing was converting the factory into a smart factory, so robotics and automation-led factory. Really, the future we told people who worked in the factory was, you're no more on the factory floor. You're supervising the robots who are going to be working in that factory. And what we need you to do is to learn the skills you need to be able to be the supervisor of machines. And that's the change we want to introduce. That's where the motivation to want to change comes in. And the moment you get that motivation, perfect. People will embrace the change.
Wow. So if I'm hearing you correctly, it's not just that you tell what company does, but it's this new identity, new transformation of identity for those people. What will they get again after this change happens? This is just a major piece. Thank you so much.
But no, I mean, the principles of storytelling remain the same. Tim, if you watched Harry Potter or you watched Lord of the Rings, my job is never to be Harry Potter, or my job is never to be Frodo. My job is to be Gandalf and Dumbledore, who help people get where they want to get, right?
Yeah.
An organization should show people where we're going to take you in future, versus say, hey, here's this big company who's doing these amazing things, and whatever happens with you is not something we're going to talk about. Yeah. I think if you shift the entire focus to employees, you are far more successful with change than you are by just giving reasons and benefits of change.
Wow. Great. So let me just summarize it real quick. First, you tell the big story of what has happened in our world. Then you tell the story of what it is causing the people from the downstairs. Then you tell the story of what are we working forward, what are we changing, and you have to include the transformation of identity, not to be the Harry Potter himself. So yeah, is that correct?
Bingo. Well done. You captured it
That's
really well.
that's amazing. You know, I've been working with change for a while now, and I've been using Shawn Callahan's strategy of, you know, the change story. He has a book, Putting Stories to Work. I
Yes,
guess you, yeah. Well,
it's a
obviously,
wonderful book. Yes.
yeah. It's just a masterpiece. I've read it like 3 times now because it's so many stuff there. And you know, your structure feels like a more complex approach. I really feel the resonance. It's not corporate communication anymore. It's more a talk between two people, and it doesn't matter what roles do they have in the organization. That's just wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. No, not at all. Pleasure. I've just noticed that when I make it a lot more about people, things just seem to work a
Yeah,
lot
it's
more.
oh my god, that's your words into the ears of the old people I know that are working with change. Okay, you know, I have a question considering people, and it fits right in. So it's usually quite tough to get the people to, you know, change, and they are quite skeptical towards not only change but also storytelling and listening to stories from the upper floor. So is there any way to cope with that, work around it?
Yeah. So, again, the two kind of people that I really watch out for when I'm helping organizations
Yeah,
build the change, A, are the skeptics, right? So who are
skeptics.
the skeptics? That's it there. The others are actually the super smart people in the organization, because super smart people have a question of questioning, have a habit of questioning everything you do. Um, and because they are super smart, they have a good following in the organization. So their ability to be able to influence
Oh,
what's
yeah.
happening is very high. So those are the two types of people I kind of watch out for. So um, I think taking these super smart people into confidence right at the beginning, because if you're doing the right thing, there's nothing to fear, right?
Yeah.
Skeptics can't change, unfortunately, right? So there's another way I work with skeptics. So there's a group of skeptics. I'll leave them behind. But my first question to the organization almost always is, who are some of the super smarts in the organization who will challenge everything you do? And they are credible and respected within the organization. So the
Yeah.
leadership team will point them out to me. And then what we will do is that we will bring them along the journey and make them a part of the organizational story development. Their views are, so they're in the brainstorm along with. So here, I also like the diversity of thought. So I'm currently working on a project in Japan, and that's a major change project. I don't just work with the leadership team. I've also brought in some really smart team members who are credible and respected and loved by a community down, to be a part of the development of the story, because I ask a lot of questions and I take views and we do sessions. So they're a part of it. So that way, the super smart people are kind of taken care of, and they become the influencers because they're a part of the process. They feel like they're contributing. Their views are heard early, and that works. Now let's talk about the skeptics, right?
Yeah.
My first policy with the skeptics is I actually don't want to worry too much about them, right? Right at the onset.
That's a
But
good line.
here's when I want to worry about them. When first the change story goes out, a lot doesn't fall in place. And that is why doesn't it fall in place? Because there's a lot of doubt. Not much has happened. People doubt the feasibility of the change. People doubt whether it can happen or not happen, right? There's a lot unknown. Here's a big, broad vision in words, but it's not become reality as yet. That's when the skeptics will start to play their role and look for other people and try to convert them and go, it's not going to work. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
Keeping them in mind, what I have actually learned is that I have to show some very, very quick wins. So in the change story, in the delivery, we come up with some really short-term wins, which will be an indication of our path towards success. So it's not like, here's how your identity will transform. If we are successful with the delivery of our change story, here are some of the things you will notice in the next 1 to 3 weeks that will start to happen. And if that happens, then you can be rest assured that we are on the right track. So if I promise people quick wins and I work hard to achieve those quick wins, those skeptics start to notice that it's falling in line. So that's one of the ways of managing the skeptics. The other way of managing the skeptics is this: you have to understand people are most influenced by people like them. when skeptics see other people becoming successful by embracing change and being acknowledged and recognized, they want that for themselves as well. And they start, they feel like they want to be like other successful people. So let me give you an example. One of the change we were trying to drive in Japan was the ability to ask questions and have the courage to ask questions, because it's such a quiet, don't speak kind of a society. From asking questions as an indication of not knowing, from asking questions as somebody who is not smart, who would ask questions, to now asking questions has transformed to be a good trait an individual can have. But in Japan, essentially, we're not at that stage where people feel like that. So we needed to show some quick wins. We needed to show that when people were asking questions, they were becoming successful, and at a larger platform, they were being acknowledged for asking questions and becoming successful. And then the skeptics sat there and thought, I want to be at that stage, winning that award for asking great questions and leading to the desired outcome. So influencing the skeptics, making sure that you show some quick wins, and making sure super smarts are part of your co-creation of the story are the ways that you manage some of the people who can be potential hazards to your success in the organization.
Wow, that's just, I'm sitting here catching the insights out of the thin air. It's just amazing. You're great at coping with those roles. I'll just say bravo. It's amazing.
Thank you, Tim. But this is just anybody who works in this space. Just over the time, we end up developing these insights.
Yeah, I know. It's just great that you're sharing them so openly. You're a true expert in this area. It's just so great to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
You've mentioned that the people are, like, there are skeptics. There are those professional folks that have to be the part of the process. But one question I would like to ask, and it's actually from a fan. There are basically fears that people have when there is change, and like I'm getting fired and stuff like that. But not to give you too many examples, what fears do you most commonly see when you're working with change, and are there any ways to cope with them using stories, like from your experience?
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant question. A lot of the change that I'm working with in this region is actually technology transformation, right?
Yeah.
A lot of it is in the manufacturing field, where factories are no more, they're starting to bring a lot of automation and robotics. And one of the biggest fear attached to that is really the job loss, right? When automation kicks in,
obviously.
Okay, so even with the telecommunications company, with the new CRM system, a lot of things the CRM system does. So people will not now need to be in those roles anymore, right? So here's what I've learned about the fears part of it. So when I first met the factory head of this semiconductor manufacturing company, I asked him, so tell me, why should people care about the factory becoming a smart factory where it's all automation and robotics? And is it true that people will not have their jobs? And he turned around and he said to me, if we do not become a smart factory, we will not have our jobs. It's actually completely the opposite. I said to him,
sweet.
So I said to him, oh, tell me more. And what his response was that we will not be able to sustain our position here in Singapore if we do not become a smart factory, because the demand for our product has increased so much that this capacity or the production we do out of this factory has to be high, or else we don't need to exist. I'm yet to come across any organization with automation that says there will be job loss. But here's what they say. When we introduce automation, what people need to understand is to learn new skills, because automation also introduces a lot of new jobs. Who are we going to put in those new jobs? We need people. And as long as you're willing to learn new skills, i.e. be the supervisor of robots, i.e. learn analytics, we will provide you the learning opportunity. Should you embrace that learning opportunity, your job is safe. So then in my head, it was really clear that the positioning of the smart factory story is to make you the future of workforce. And the moment I positioned it like that to people, Smart Factory is not coming to take your jobs. Smart Factory is coming to make you the workforce of the future. And let me tell you how. And then we go into details of it. Suddenly people went, oh, my God, I'll have skills. The first factory in Singapore to have skills that nobody else has. And the company is going to teach me how to have these skills of future. So what I have learned is so whenever you do change, you have to have a purpose worthwhile. Like, what is the purpose of this? And for people, higher revenue, better position in the brand, a better position is not a purpose worthwhile. It is a purpose, but not worthwhile. So you have to think about what is the purpose worthwhile to the person I'm talking. And if I can position that correctly, the fear seems to reduce immensely.
Wow. That's just wonderful. Wow. I mean, that's so people oriented, and I love that this fear is transformed to be not a downside but an upside. That's just great. I've missed this opportunity before. We were talking about the three types of stories that to work with change. Short question: can we communicate them in one message or like in one speech of a CEO, or would it be rather like more efficient, or to break them into pieces and like just make them in more time,
Okay, so it's funny you ask this question, because I always say this, that when a person delivers this story, you would not even be able to guess that all those columns that I'm talking about that the person's delivery looks so spontaneous that you can't even guess there's a method behind it. So by the time the story is ready and the delivery seems so spontaneous, but the truth is the spontaneity of that story is only an illusion. There's a real method behind it.
Of course.
And so of all my clients that I work with, their delivery is all together, but nobody can tell there's a method. It just seems like they're telling a story. So, at this time it was like this, and then suddenly something happened one day, and then I went and spoke to Maria, who worked on the factory floor, and then she said this to me. It seems like this person is just delivering a dialogue, but in fact, this person's actually telling the story. So the answer to your question is, it's never segmented, it's never fragmented, it's never slide by slide. The story usually I support with really meaningful visuals, no writing, and only part where I bring the writing in on the slides is when I introduce the change, right?
Oh, so of course.
That's the only part.
That's right.
Otherwise, all are done together. Roughly, I give it depending on leader's capability, not leader's capability, that's wrong. Depending on the agenda, we either make it minimum a 6-minute to a maximum a 12-minute version. So 6 to 12-minute version, and they deliver the story of why we need to embark on a change from a very personal point of view.
6 to 12, right?
Yeah, that's the kind of timing I've been able to condense the stories into.
Wow, that's beautiful. I love how you answer the questions, not by technical response, but giving the reasons behind them. That really shows that you've been so long in this area, and you have stumbled upon some stuff. And thank you for sharing your insights. Anjali, there is, I guess, one last question before I get to the two traditional final questions that I love. And this question would be, do you have a story from a training, like when you give, I think that you are not only providing change, but also educating people to use the story in change. Maybe there was a story that from a person in the training which fascinated you or inspired you the most, or one that comes to mind with working with change. Can you share it if it's not confidential?
Yeah, so a lot of the work that we actually do is extremely concrete about the change, but there's a segment in it where they have to start off with a personal sort of story, right? They begin with the first 1.5 to 2 minutes of this 6 to 12 minute narration is that the person who delivers it, they take the purpose worthwhile and they align it with their own personal story. And they talk about a situation where they have actually faced a change or managed a change. I think there was this one leader who told a story which was very, very similar to the
Yeah,
story of, the founder of Body Shop.
I know the company, but
Yeah, the founder
I
of
guess I
Body
don't
Shop.
know.
I'm forgetting her name.
Well,
So
let's go call her like.
yeah, so it was a very similar story, and I
Yeah,
think the reason why I felt it so much is because there was a lot of resonance in that story, and it was a personal story, and the idea of that program was that we will question everything that we do. We will bring it out. So moving forward, the strategy development will be done in a different way. And
yeah,
the idea will be that everything that we plan for the strategy, the culture will be for the idea to be on the table, and everybody is allowed to question whatever they want to question about that particular piece. And that's going to be considered as a good thing and not going to be considered as something that is like personal attacking and this and that and all that sort of stuff. So this lady told this story, which I never forget. And I'll tell you the story of the Body Shop founder, which it was very aligned to her story. And it's always remained in my mind, and sort of starts off by saying that, I went to a Catholic school, but, my mother never really liked the local priest. And I clearly remember the day that my father passed away. I was sitting on the staircase of the house, and my mother was cleaning the floor, and there was a dirty bucket of water lying around, and the doorbell rang, and my mother opened the door, and at the door was the priest. And the priest told my mother that, that she's very lucky that my father would be getting a Catholic funeral. And my mother picked up the bucket of dirty water and just splashed it on the priest. And, that moment has taught me that you should question everything, and you should, my parenting and the way my mother was has really taught me to be very fearless. And it's that same grit and fearlessness that actually doesn't stop me from putting every single idea that I have, put it on the table and let the world interrogate it, because I have nothing to fear. And if I don't know the answer, I'll say I don't know the answer. What's there to fear? And I also remember the way she closed it was like Mary Curie. She closed it by saying, we've got nothing to fear, only to learn. So when you actually, when you interrogate my ideas, when I put them on the table, I walk into it with a mindset that I'm only going to be learning, but I have nothing to fear. So when she told that story of the her story was exactly the same, maybe just in some different words. When she aligned that to the strategy of making sure that every piece gets interrogated and how she's not going to be fearful about it, I actually felt an immense amount of resonance in that story. And I think the reason why I felt resonance in it is because quite often, sometimes, when we question, we feel like people are thinking that we don't trust them, or we are not making it, we're trying to, intrude into their personal boundaries or making it difficult for them. But the idea here is really not that. And I pretty much follow the same culture with my team as well. Like, we question everything. So yeah, I mean, that personal story is always stuck with me from the client.
Wow, that's really powerful. I was in that flat looking at that splashing water. Let me just ask you one question to clarify it for me, because I got into it so much that I got into the pictures. Yeah, can you tell me the conflict they had? Like, she didn't appreciate the priest, and she questioned his authority, and that's the part where she was fearless. Did I get it right?
Yeah, and also the fact that the priest would say something like this: "Oh, you're very lucky. Your husband will get a Catholic."
Yeah. So he was like, "You."
Yeah,
I get it. Yeah,
like, what do you
she's
even
such a
mean by
strong
that?
woman. Wow. Yeah, it's
Yeah, and
wow.
those are really very strong turning points. And Tim, we can be very practical and logical and methodical about storytelling.
Yeah.
But here's the challenge about it, right? not unless you show a complication strong enough in a story. If you don't show complication, you don't show tension, which we often miss out in a very practical, logical storytelling. We often miss out strong complications that affect humans. We talk about complications at broader levels. If we miss out the complication and tension, you miss out an ability to empathize because you do not trigger the release of hormone oxytocin in people's body. And when you do not have tension, you do not have empathy because oxytocin doesn't release. And when you don't have empathy, you do not have connection. And then it's an overhead transmission. So,
wow.
No matter how practical and logical we want to be, it should always be from the perspective of people. Stories are about people. Stories are not about products, and stories are not about services, and stories are not about factories. Stories are about how these things change people. Even if you look at data, the data tells you what's going on, but stories tell you why that matters. So,
yes, exactly.
I hold that view very strongly in storytelling.
Yeah, that's exactly the reason I love stories so much, because this question of why is really a rare question, and I love that stories pose and answer this question. That's great.
Yeah,
Anjali,
sure.
thank you so much. This is just full of insights for me. I'm going to refer to you so many times while working with stories. And now I would love to switch to the last two questions. I traditionally ask them. And the first one is, what would be your advice for people who want to develop their storytelling skills, maybe to work with change or just storytelling skills, and they are in the beginning of their way? What would be your advice for them?
I'll share with you what's kind of been the strategies that have worked for me.
Okay.
So I think that's exactly the advice for anyone who's starting off in this field.
Yes.
Documenting your work is such an important thing. What do I mean by that? You go to a workshop today, you run a storytelling session. If you don't come back and blog it, I don't blog for the world at all. I blog for documenting my own learnings. And if the world happens to learn from it, I am very thankful and I'm happy. But I'm not writing to gain publicity at all. I'm writing because I want to document my work. So people think we learn via experience. We go, we run a workshop, we've had an experience, and that's great. I think that is wrong. You learn via reflecting upon your experiences. So I think a discipline to come back, reflect upon the workshop, and write a piece, put it out in this world. If nobody read it, doesn't matter. What matters is that you reflected upon your learning. Why all this falls into place for me now is because 2014, I started writing about my experience. I don't think anybody read what I wrote. But for me, it was really important to document my learnings because I was developing these insights and I wanted to be able to capture them. The moment I wrote them, they would go and take place. They would go and sit in my head. The number of times I walk into meetings and clients have printed out my blog and they'll say, I want you to actually talk more about this. It's fascinating for me. So I think documenting your learning with whatever experience you've had. So if I'm conversing with you right now, I'm going to reflect upon it. And I'll be like, okay, so why would have Tim asked me that question? Why is that question even important? I think that discipline for anybody who's starting out is very, very important. Second thing that I would say to people, somehow we tend to get hooked into wanting to deep dive and learn from people who are within the same field. Some of my biggest amazing projects have happened because of the learnings I've had from books that are not from the discipline of storytelling. I'll give you an example. So I read this book called Thank You for Being Late. I refer to that book so much in digital transformation. So don't think you only have to read about storytelling from books. Read other books. Actually, when you start connecting your storytelling with other books, you actually attach the two and you come up with an original new insight that nobody else has decoded as yet. That's happened to me so many times. Currently, I'm reading a book called the art, how can you learn to, the courage to be disliked. It is by a Japanese philosopher. and I'm learning so much, and you being able to use that content in storytelling, you know, it's uncanny when you broaden your horizons of learning. So number one, document. Number two, read broad. Don't read too streamlined. Read broad and read and document your learning. Those are the two things that have worked for me a lot.
That's great. I've just visited a training conference recently, and there was this masterclass that really follows both of your advices, because I really documented it, and it wasn't from about storytelling. It was about acting, and how acting reflects and transforms your identity and your views and your logical reasoning and stuff like that. So wow, that you just took it out of my head. Great. And the last question, my favorite one, is can you finish a phrase I made up? It goes like this: if it took one thing to get from a good story to a great story, maybe a change story, that one thing would be
resonance.
Resonance? You mean?
Always resonance. So here's the thing. If I come up with a change story, it may be the right change story, but it's not right if it's not resonating with the person who's listening, it's not true for that person. So resonance, where I make the person feel this is my story, that's what it takes to go from a good story to a great story. If it doesn't resonate, it's not true. I am simply obsessed with an ability to with the focus on making sure that the stories resonate and people listen to the story and they go, it's my story.
And to do that, what I heard from this interview is you have to include the people and their problem and their pain into the story. Is that right?
For sure, that's right. The other thing to keep in mind is when you tell the story, there's always a character in the story, and if you make sure that character is somewhat like your audience, then resonance happens. And I learned this insight from my grandma, actually. You know, there was it was a long time ago. I was driving to a movie hall with my grandma, and my grandma's she's very quirky. You know, she said, you know, when I was young, I used to go and watch a movie and I used to feel I'm the actress. But now, when I go and watch a movie, if there is no grandma, then I don't feel like I'm in the movie because I'm so old now, so I can't be the actress. So then I asked her, so what do you mean? You imagine yourself to be the main character of the story? And she's like, yeah, I do. And I'm like, okay. And then I started to think about it and I go, oh my God, when they show Serena Williams in Nike ads, really flashing the thing, you imagine yourself like that. And that also, in a very business context, you can bring that resonance in, as long as whatever you're talking about, people can see their own identity in it.
Wow, that's great. Wow, I mean, I'm not that person who imagines myself Serena Williams, but you know that when they show David Beckham, 100%. Thank you. That's a lovely story. Thank you for sharing it. I love how you reflect on it and make this personal story a learning issue that really resonates with me as a storyteller. Thank you so much.
Not at
Anjali,
all.
that was really brilliant. I'm also thankful for your time and your insights. I would love you to leave some contacts and I will post them in the description just for the folks around here and Konstantin.
Sure. Thank you.
So how can they find you in online? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I'm active in a lot of platforms. But I'll share some with you. So if you are extremely sort of professional in your approach and you want to only learn about practicalities of storytelling, then LinkedIn is a great place. So Anjali Sharma LinkedIn is a great place. You see 3 types of activities from me there. Usually I turn up on a Tuesday, I turn up on a Wednesday, and I turn up on a Friday. 3 days of the week I turn up there. One is a visual post, one is a video post, and one is a writing post. But if you want to kind of expand a little bit and get to know my life beyond just professional capacity, things which I'm interested in and help me become a better professional. I'm hugely passionate about working with women and you can see that side of me on Instagram, which is at Anjali Stories. So I think I turn up on Instagram every day except Sunday. And it's never a picture of food.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's a picture of the work that we do, or something in writing of the work we're doing. So those are the two things, at Anjali Stories or LinkedIn, I would say.
Great. I'll post both of them. Anjali, thank you so much. And we wanted to say something.
No, I just wanted to thank you. And I think, the work that you're doing for the community to bring something like this to your country and making the effort of connecting with people worldwide, clearly, is remarkable. How many of us can wake up in the morning and make the effort that you're making? Because, time is precious and it requires time and grit and effort to do this. So I'm very thankful to you to give me this opportunity, and very proud of you that you're doing this for your people.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Wow. Thank you. And I wish you really great stories to come. We'll stay connected, and I will tell you when the interview airs. Okay?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. Yeah.